Good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for coming. My name is Chris Kennedy. I'm the programmer for the year-round wavelengths section here at TIFF Bell Lightbox. And on behalf of TIFF Bell Lightbox, I wanted to acknowledge the Mississaugas of the New Credit, the Huron-Wendat, and the Haudenosaunee, the original keepers of the land who host us on this land every day. Very excited to be here, and actually with you, very excited that so many people came out today. Hometown crowd for our local artist, Faraz Anoushahpour, Parastoo Anoushahpour, and Ryan Ferko, here to present the program, What the Complete Image Could Be. So without further ado, let's bring them up on the stage to say hello.
Hello. Hi. Yeah, so thanks to Chris, for inviting us for this to happen. And thanks to all of you for coming out. It's intense for us, so you could know a lot of you. So it's, I've never seen these works all together. Faraz has. Parastoo hasn't. So it's a new experience for everybody. And there's a new work at the end.
Yeah, just thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chris. You've been great. Thank you. And see you after, I guess.
Yeah, maybe we could just say that I think Chooka's first. Yes. And Chooka, Chris invited us to participate in this wavelengths screening tonight, but also really made Chooka possible through commission through LIFT, the Liaison of Independent Filmmakers of Toronto. So extra thanks to Chris for making the film possible as well. So we'll talk after.
I kind of got the, I kind of let the momentum of the introduction get away from me, and I forgot a couple things. And one thing that I wanted to notice that you as a trio work together in a variety of different ways, both through video and through installation and through performance. And I think those latter two kind of really, when I see documentation of that work, I really see how you approach image kind of as an object. And an object has texture, and an object kind of has weight, and an object has memory. And I feel like that really resonates quite well with what your videos how they deal with images as well. And I wondered if that kind of observation resonated with how you saw your practice.
I think media is like the media is very important to us, and we shoot a lot of material, and we also work a lot with archives in various ways, and there's always this need to treat the material or to get away from it, to see it as an image. And I think to call it an object is maybe a helpful way to think about it. It's not something that we've talked about really before, but there's always a spatial element to how we work with all of these images that we collect and work with. So we're always working in space, reprojecting images, refilming screens, shooting on digital, reshooting on film, or backwards. So there's a sort of distancing from the locations and the places we're working.
And I think there's a way that that image has to become a shared object between us in order for us to be able to work. And I think the way we started working together with this was this desire to explore this visual space in one's brain, and how you make it external and share it possibly, or how that could fail, or how that could work. So in order to do that, there was always these processes, and always usually performative, to create space and to create sharing somehow, to get close and to get away from something. And I think that process creates something kind of solid, or object, I guess.
Yeah, and depending on where we are and what we're doing with that, the final form changes. So, and they're interchangeable, because at the time when we're sharing these things and we're working through them, it makes sense to share it with others through performance. And then you have some distance from it, and then that turns into an object, and that changes. And so, yeah, I mean, Chooka turned into a performance after the fact that we made a film because we wanted to open it up in some way again. So it's always like, I mean, they're puzzle like, so there's always entries for even for us to enter into them and open them up again and kind of put them back together as puzzles, as objects.
And that sharing element that you talk about, it becomes really apparent in Chooka, as when the photographs that you hand out to people in Iran from this footage that you were able to work with, and how that was how those images were trying to trigger a path to finding out what this was, right?
Yeah, and I think Chooka was a really amazing shift in our work where we were given this material, and within it there was this urgency to take the archive from where it was housed back to where it came from, and many years had gone by, and that brought this agency to share not just within us to others, and by taking those printing. So impulse was to print photographs of it and have it on our phone so we can go and show it and to as many people as we can and start this kind of conversation between future, past, present, and then and I think being able to shoot on 16 made this kind of timelessness possible, to be able to go back and forth without really ever knowing where you are in time. But then also it was a shared experience with our hosts and with this young boy that was with us the whole time. And we were sharing, and kind of he ended up at the very end share his own footage of us with us, which was kind of like a mirroring back of this roles, I think, that we had.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I could talk about Chooka more, but yeah, should I?
Well, maybe someone will bring in a question about that. But I actually wanted to just, before opening up to the floor, just talk about this idea of the puzzle piece as well, because I mean, and I feel this kind of, I feel this in all the films, but especially the Central 2, which I feel is mostly you guys shooting, and then bringing the elements back from, and you're in residency in both of these cases, bringing them back and creating a narrative out of a location in many ways, and putting these pieces together and creating a puzzle. And I just wanted to hear a little bit more about the process of those particular two, because they're
you mean
A Heart of the Mountain and Bunte Kuh.
Okay. Yeah, I mean.
These are the Central 2 films.
Yeah, the second, and third ones. Yeah, I mean, I guess starting with Bunte Kuh is Bunte Kuh is the third one in the program. So the shortest one, the flickering fish. I mean, this is in a way our it's not our first work, but it's our first work that really started circulating and came out of a really intense experiment in working and collaborating that we subjected ourselves to, in a way that we're living together in a studio space in another city for 2 months and recording our conversations every week for the first month, and then shooting a vast amount of material based on these scripts of us analyzing our conversations with each other, and made 2 like longer sort of essay films that desired to remove this sort of authority of the essay voice. And I think that's sort of a center of our practice is questioning the authority of how images are constructed and how narratives are told, whether they're histories or more abstract images or narratives. Bunte Kuh didn't come to exist until we came back to Toronto from where we were. And it was sort of this memory experience that we were able to filter through a live translated postcard that we had someone read for us, translating from German to English. And it gave us a sort of framework, a faltering narrative quality that allowed us to re-enter this. There was 40 hours of material projecting it in space and shooting it again and zooming into it and creating this other way of interacting with it. And that led us to what feels like a death or it's a very intense piece, I think, and that intensity occurred through us working in this space and working through the material. We were led to it, and it feels like there's sort of this key change at the end that I think happens in a lot of our work. Our work leads us somewhere, and then there's a re-understanding of what we have experienced in a place we've been. And I think the work also, by the end, there's sort of you re-experience this narrative as it's happened. It happens in Chooka, and it happens in Bunte Kuh, and it happens in Heart of a Mountain a bit differently, but I think it happens there as well.
And I think Heart of a Mountain was similar situation, but we were for 3 months in Taipei and wanting to make a film. I mean, how do you make a film about a place? And we decided to go through the route of language because we were so utterly lost. And we decided to, this here actually the image became, the object is very present because we decided to use these language apps that are created to give mainly tourists access to an otherwise completely obscured language. And we use the app and its logic to read objects. So we took slices of stones that are very specific to a location in Taiwan, and this Capitoline wolf sculpture that was given to Chiang Kai-shek as like a celebration of a creation, like a creation myth. And we took these two objects and started reading them with this app, and this app gave us words, and the words became this poem, but then we obsessively translated it back and forth to Mandarin English, to the point where the English didn't make sense to us and the Mandarin didn't make sense to the Mandarin speakers. But it was the space that we were working with. And through that, we were able to deal with the tensions and the impossibility and the disorientation that comes with what do you do with your body and communication within a space.
Why don't we open it up for some questions from the audience? If there's anyone, please raise your hand. There's some mics in the audience as well, so please wait for that because we can't see you.
Does this work?
Yes.
Great. So I couldn't let you sort of get away with the title of this retrospective, which is what the complete image could be. And I took that word completeness as sort of the framework through which to view this set of films. And it begins, in the first film, it's very present in the fact of the child wanting to exhaustively narrate the completeness of the image, detail by detail, cataloging all the films that he made. But then, as I viewed your style, it became clear to me that you were trying to get to completeness through facets of incompleteness or fragmentation, thinking about how you morcellate your images so that you use extreme close-ups so that you can't tell what the whole or the complete image might be, and also thinking about the ways in which you use abyssal language, like that Mandarin that was almost comprehensible to me but fell into the gap between between Mandarin and English. And I'm wondering, to answer your speculative question with my own speculative question, when is the complete image? Is it something that's to come, or is it something that's foreclosed from ever coming? Or to phrase it another way, what is it that completes the image? Or what is it that is the complete image? A trifecta of questions.
I get this question? Okay. I mean, I guess there's a sense like of course, protagonists like Puria, who narrates that obsessively, mirrors us who collectively kind of strive towards a completeness, but at the same time know that completeness is not, you can't get to it. So each project kind of comes with tactics or ways of working towards that while knowing that it never gets there. So yes, it's always if we have protagonists or protagonists like that who guide us there. And again, at the same time, it's a collective thing that's happening. It's not that we know that we don't know, when we're working with this stuff. So that's that completeness. I don't know. You want to add?
I think it's been a journey trying to think about what the complete image is or could be. And I think the first impulse was that it can't be. And that's why the impulse to challenge the voice of the essay film, whether there is like an actual voiceover or just images, but there's still the illusion of completeness that comes with it, and the points that are made and the conclusions that are drawn, and that thinking that that's impossible or oppressive or something, and trying to bring out this the power in completeness or shared space or conflict or like ambiguity or something that's not legible. Maybe not to everyone, but there would be one person that understands something in it, and maybe that's completeness, or maybe it's not. And I think more and more we're not sure, because there's still this desire to communicate. You don't want to block and you don't want to alienate. So I think there's always that tension, and I don't know what that could be yet.
Yeah, I mean, and what the complete image could be. I mean, the question Chris pulled that title out of a performance we did at Mercer Union, where we deconstructed Chooka, the first film in the program. And I mean, I think it's a good sort of summation of what we've been up to these years, and constantly up to. Like, we're always doing this, and I mean, we saw 4 films, but we're always doing this, and it's a question of what the complete image could be is never being satisfied. It's always being reworked and questioned, and I think there's a political dimension to that. There's a desire. There's a concern with something fixing and solidifying, and traveling as an object. Or, I mean, we talk about objects, but when you put films on a screen and then they go into a film festival and they start going around the world a bit, it gets strange when you come back to them a few years later, because they become objects that are fixed. And almost all of the films we've made, we've forced ourselves through these sort of performative gestures, or these. We did something the other night. We did a reading the other night. There's always a desire to break them. So it's what the complete image could be is the question I think we're still asking. But thank you, Fan. Good question.
I have a question. Hi, I want to go back to Parastoo's question. I'm back here.
Oh, Amy. Yeah.
Hi. Parastoo, you said something about how do you make a film about a place? And I feel like all of these films are trying to do such that. I'm also, like, as soon as this program ended, I was struck by how dislocated I felt. And you guys choose to remain based in Toronto. That's kind of non-space, right? That's kind of stand-in space. So I was wondering, maybe I would love to hear you guys talk about what dislocation means to you and to what placemaking means to you.
Wow.
Also, nice pants.
Yeah. No offense. Yeah, good. Thanks for the question. I don't think Toronto's a non-place or a stand-in place, but I think, like, we started our work with really working for 4 years in Cornwall between on Toronto and Montreal, and the place sucked us in for 4 years, and the idea wasn't that it would. And I think that's the power of just lived space and the complexity of it. And I think the desire to be obsessively trying to articulate place comes from some experience of movement, I guess. But yeah, I think I don't know. Do you wanna?
I yeah, like it's a question about Toronto maybe first, and then I mean part of our dynamic, and I think the desire for it and why it remains productive is we've had different experiences, and Toronto has I'm from Toronto. And I met Parastoo and Faraz in Toronto six years ago. And we've been working together since we first met. And the experience of us going to places like Cornwall for 4 years has been, and going to other places in other parts of the world, has been an experience for me personally of locating Toronto for me as a place that I had experienced as a non-place, I think, up until relatively recently. And it feels very located to me, and it feels very vital and very important. And so, I mean, I think there is a choice. I mean, we talk about it a lot, why we're here and how we are here. But it's a productive place, I think. It's a very, 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 very complex place. I don't think we've been able to really make a film about Toronto. But I think we're always alluding to it. Complex identities of this place in our work.
We have time for one more question.
Here, hi. Can you guys talk a little bit about your process working together? You're saying that you're always working together, and we've only seen 4 films. So, are there any kind of processes that you do that are always the same within each film that you're doing? What changes? There's also a lot of quite abstract subject matter that you're dealing with. So how do you come together within one vision when you're creating your films?
They mostly start, the projects start with location or research or place of interest that kind of gives us parameters that the three of us, or has enough layers for the three of us to enter into and then kind of navigate it in our own ways. So it always starts with, in most cases, except for Chooka, which kind of had a different start because we were given an archive, and then that archive sort of defined our location, which then from then on was quite similar. But then once we have those parameters, we kind of enter into it, 3 of us working together on mostly everything. So we do research, we share the research, and then once we get to the production of it, we're producing at the same time, we're filming at the same time, we're recording sound at the same time, and a lot of that happens quite spontaneously and by chance. So once we enter into a place, we kind of know loosely who we should meet and where we should go, and we kind of make a loose plan, but then open to chance as well. And then from that, an archive is made, or a data, like a cataloging of things and things of interest. And we come back usually to Toronto, usually in the winter, in the dead of winter. And we start working with this material, and we start like going through it and thinking about it and editing small sequences, sharing those sequences, and those sequences get taken up and then re-edited again to the point that one sequence is no longer the others, and slowly as a form emerges or a structure, then we start to kind of build outwards. But I think a lot of that is process-based, and to the point that some kind of a thread emerges and then you build around that. Yeah, and that's for mostly the film work. Sometimes we do performances, and I think, but that's mostly a question of form. When it comes to object making, is also very similar. But yeah, do you want to? Yeah, if that answers the question.
Well, that's all the time we have right now. So thanks so much for. And this season wraps up next Wednesday, the 12th, with the final films that Stan Brakhage made before he passed away with cancer. And then the winter season starts on January 23rd with the films of Paul Clipson. Hope you can make it for that as well. But thanks very much for coming tonight.